coming up on Wrestling Life.
Again, for you dirt sheet riders, I'm going on record and saying, don't say that there's another match coming up somewhere. I'm saying that there were rumblings and talks about it. So don't sit up there and put in your little dirt sheets that D-Von said this and D-Von said that. Because if you do, you can go f*** yourself.
This is Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that celebrates wrestling's past, present, and future with real talk from real talent.
Hello and welcome, my friends, to Wrestling Life with Ben Veal. I'm so looking forward to this conversation today, as joining me is one half of the most decorated tag teams in wrestling history. He's a WWE Hall of Famer, a 24-time tag champion, a former TNA television champion, the founder of D-Von Academy, and most impressively of all, in my opinion, he's a father of 7. Straight out of Dudleyville, it is time to testify, for it is of course the one, the only, it's D-Von Dudley. A very warm welcome to Wrestling Life. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me. And as I said, I mean, for me, out of all your accomplishments, I have to start from one I find most impressive, which is that you have 7 children. And the reason I find that impressive is because I've got 2 boys, and sometimes I feel outnumbered as a dad. How do you ever manage to get anything done with 7 kids around?
Well, you have to remember, I didn't have them all at once. I've had 4 from 2 previous marriages, and then the last 3 I had from the last marriage. So therefore, the 4 first kids are grown pretty much, so they're out of the house. It's only the last 3 that I have that are babies.
So how old are your youngest now?
8 months.
8 months. Oh, so you're in the thick of it right now, changing diapers and sleepless nights.
Listen, I don't complain about it where some people do. I love it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually miss that. My boys are 11 and 6 now, and I actually really miss those days when they're so tiny and they fall asleep on you. They are the magic years, aren't they?
Absolutely, my friend.
Yeah. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Terrence and Terrell, who've gone on to work inside an AEW ring and very much kind of following your footsteps, as Taz has said, a chip off the old block. What's it been like to be part of their wrestling journey so far?
It's been fun. It's been real, giving them advice, helping them out along the way. They're no longer with AEW. They've left, and they're now pursuing NXT, which I think is fantastic. In my opinion, regardless to where I've been over the years of my career, WWE has always been my home. It's been my first and foremost place that I would call home. And so with that being said, I would love for my sons to do the same thing. Again, they'll have their own opinion on what home is, but, they've been around all the WrestleManias, the Monday Night Raws, the SmackDowns, where other people were fascinated and what we call in this business marked out for people like The Rock and, Eddie Guerrero, all the stars, Chris Jericho, Edge, Christian, to them, it was Uncle Rock. To them, it was Uncle Edge, Uncle, Christian, because they grew up with them. And, we were a family during the Attitude Era. So we all embraced each other's families and really, really enjoyed it. Just like Dominic. I knew Dominic when Dominic was 3 years old, walking around with Eddie, with a bottle in his mouth. Now he's a grown-ass man hanging out with mommy and causing mischief in WWE. So, it's amazing how, times have changed. I remember when the Usos were running around in catering with Terrence and Terrell. They were barely in they were barely in junior high, when I first met the Usos, because their father and I basically ran rapid up and down the highways, creating matches that people still talk about today. So it's one of those things where family was very important back then, and it still is now, even in the WWE. So, I'm happy to say that all of these kids that have grown up and now becoming second-generation wrestlers have now taken over where their fathers left off. And I'm very proud to say Terrence and Terrell have done the same thing.
And it's amazing because, NXT, the Performance Center, all the infrastructure that exists now for this generation is incredible compared to, obviously, when you were training to become a wrestler, isn't it? It's amazing the opportunities that are there now.
There's different, the way I grew up in the business was extremely old school. You didn't talk back, you didn't say anything, and if you did, you got beat up. Yeah. And it was nothing you could do about it, it was a lot harder back then, believe it or not, because it wasn't what you knew, it was who you knew back then. The business was very sacred back then. Kayfabe hadn't been broken yet, so nobody knew the ins and outs of pro wrestling or even how to get involved in it. It was a different generation back then. And it's a lot easier for people now to be able to break into the business. They can find a wrestling school, contact the WWE online, send in their resume, the whole nine. It is somewhat of a who you know nowadays, but not as much as it was back when I, grew up in the business. A lot of people like to say, I know Bubba brings this to the forefront, is that we were the last of the old school generation. We were the last of the true dynasty. And, this generation feels like things should be handed to them and things like that. Certain people, not all. There are some people in this business that have respect for the business and respect for those that have come before them. But there are others that haven't been brought up in the business the right way and yet take it south.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear that. And I mean, obviously you experienced, the whole gamut of kind of that time from, being in there in ECW as an ECW original to, to go into the WWF in the Attitude Era. I mean, it's such a different business these days. But I want to ask a little bit about kind of going back to your upbringing, because I want to talk about faith in this conversation, because I know that's very important to you. And I know you were raised by a bishop and a pastor. How did that influence you growing up? And also, what on earth did your parents think when you first told them that you were training to become a professional wrestler?
Well, my father was a bishop right before he passed away. He had his church in Harlem, New York, well over 500 members he preached to. He had very strong political ties in New York, dealt with Hillary Clinton, former Mayor Giuliani, and Congressman Charles Rango. Wow. And he passed away in 2003 of cancer. And, it left a big gap in the family. My mother took over and became the first Black woman to ever pastor over 500 members in Harlem, New York. And so she's doing it, actually celebrating a 20th pastoral anniversary today as we speak.
Oh, that's incredible.
I was just talking to her. She has a big billboard in Times Square with her face on it saying congratulations to Dr. Renee, Reverend Renee Washington Gardner. Wow.
That must make you feel so proud to see that. That's incredible.
Very proud. And, I grew up in a very Christian home, and, I'm 52 years old, and I don't talk back at all, because it was very strict when I grew up. You didn't say the word dawn, damn, or hell, like that. Sometimes I'll slip every once in a while and then pretend like I didn't say it, look at me like, excuse me, so, I still hold very high respect for how I was brought up. My grandmother, who was the fist of the family, basically passed away in 1999. She was my heart. She was my soul. My mother was pregnant at 15, had me at 16. So she had me fairly young. So that's why my grandmother pretty much took over. And I was kind of like her son as well. But again, as God put it, faith was strong. And my mother got saved in 1997. We grew up in Brooklyn, New York, so it was rough. It was really, really rough. And she was out there in the world doing her thing. And then I asked her, this is when crack first came on the scene in 1983, and it was causing people to do things that wasn't right. Good citizens, good people that, went to work every day or what have you, took that first hit and was hooked. Yeah. And, it changed everybody's lives. So my grandmother and my great aunt said, we got to get him out of the projects, because if not, we don't know what's going to happen. And they got me out. And my mother, I went to church with my aunt, and she was a devout Christian. And I asked my mother to come I was in the choir. I asked my mother to come to my choir anniversary because we were singing and doing our thing there. She came in, and from that point on, she had gotten saved. And that's where she met my stepfather, where they raised me and pretty much did what they, doing today. Now, in terms of how she felt when I chose pro wrestling, she was not happy. I had a 4-year scholarship to Florida A&M to play. And I changed high schools at the time because we left Long Island and moved to New Rochelle, New York. And, I was a star player in Long Island. But then when I got to New Rochelle, it just didn't click to me. And so I was having problems, when I was playing. But it was enough to be able to get that scholarship. And, I enjoyed football tremendously. But I just knew that my love for pro wrestling wasn't the same. And I could tell you who won the tag team titles in 1936, but I couldn't tell you who won the Super Bowl that year. That's how I knew. And so my senior year came about, and I told certain people that I was going to go to wrestling school, and they all laughed at me. They thought it was a joke because back then, pro wrestling, you didn't know how to get into pro wrestling. It was taboo. You didn't know. It was kayfabe. And people laughed and made fun of me and joked and this and that. And I basically, just decided I was going to do it anyway. When I told my mother that, I was every name but my name. I thought she was going to break out her oil and start doing an exercise. She was mad because, I told my mother and I told my father, I said, listen, I don't want to play football anymore. I'm done. I'd rather get into pro wrestling. My father understood, but my mother was not having it. And she was very angry about it. We didn't speak for almost 10 years after that. I had to wind up leaving home because of it. It was out of respect. And she basically just lost it, And I just remember I said, I have to make it. Because if I don't make it, then people not only are going to talk about me, but they're basically going to ridicule me for the decision that I made for passing up a 4-year scholarship at Florida A&M. Listen, I could have lasted in Florida A&M. I could have been a big star. I could not have been a big star. I could have went to the NFL and played, but that doesn't mean I would have made it.
Yeah.
I could have been cut, after being drafted to a team. So it doesn't matter. Even if I would have made it to the NFL, who's to say that I would have had a long career?
Sure.
Who would have said I would last maybe a year or two? But I lasted in wrestling for 33 years. So therefore, I think I made the right decision in choosing pro wrestling.
I think we can safely say that you did. But I mean, obviously, the time that you come in is, the pathways, as you say, to wrestling were not so easy to kind of discern, and it was a different era in terms of the kayfabe era. No one, outsiders didn't really know what was real, what wasn't. So I can imagine that would kind of cause some issues. But it's incredible the journey you've been on, and so much of it obviously comes back to your, the experiences you've had in ECW. And I was in Philadelphia for WrestleMania 40 as my first live WrestleMania, and I felt so blessed to be there for Paul Heyman's Hall of Fame induction speech. It gave me literal goosebumps, and it's the closest I'll ever get to kind of a live, authentic ECW experience.
That was the first time I think people were able to see Paul Heyman at his best. That was Paul Heyman on a regular basis when you saw him do his speech. That's what we dealt with when we were in ECW. Nobody ever got a chance to see that. And I don't know if Vince was still in power at the time. Would we have been able to do that? I don't think so. No. So kudos to Hunter, and letting Paul Heyman run crazy during that speech, and it was an excellent speech on top of that.
It was amazing. A lot of F-bombs, but also a beautiful speech, very heartfelt, thanked a lot of people, obviously dedicated it to his children. I mean, what can you tell me about Paul in terms of how instrumental he was to your life and your character development?
Well, Paul was the one that discovered D-Von. In terms of Tommy Dreamer and Taz were the one that gave the okay to Paul when I was at the ECW training facility trying out. And, they gave the okay, the thumbs up. So when I met Paul, at the time in the wrestling school, I was going under the name of A-Train. It was a name that was given. There was no rhyme or reason why that name was given. It was just something to give me. And, it flowed with me. So when I got to the ECW studio and I got to meet Paul Heyman for the first time, I said, so what are you going to call me? And he goes, what's your name? I said, what do you mean, what's my name? Like, I was like, did you forget my name? And he's like, what's your name? I go, D-Von. He goes, how about D-Von? And I just went, D-Von. He's like, yeah, D-Von Dudley. And I just went, okay, I'm not going to tell him no, And he goes, what's your character as A-Train? And I had the same thing I told you. There was no rhyme or reason to give me that character. It was just Johnny Rods just said, okay, I'm going to call you A-Train because you remind us of a kid that was here before you that was named A-Train. So we're going to call you A-Train. And I told him that, and he was like, all right. He was like, let me ask you a question. Tell me your background. I told him my background about my parents and everything. And he says, okay. He goes, what's your favorite movie? I said, my favorite movie. He goes, yeah, what's your favorite movie? I said, Rocky 3. He goes, why Rocky 3? He goes, Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone. I go, no, Mr. T. And he goes, really? I go, yeah. I was like, I used to do Mr. T impressions all the time. I said, it got to the point where I was very good at it. Now, if you tell somebody like Paul Heyman that you're good at doing an impression, you better do it right. And he put me on the spot. He goes, let me see you do Mr. T. And when I did it for him, he was shocked. He was like, wow. He was like, you sound just like Mr. T. I said, I've been studying him my whole life, the whole character. He goes, have you ever seen Pulp Fiction? And I said, no. He's like, with John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. And I said, no, I haven't. He goes, I want you to go home. It's on video. I want you to go home and I want you to take a look at Pulp Fiction and then call me. Let me know what you think. I want you to look at the character from Samuel L. Jackson. I said, okay. So I went home, looked at it, and knew it because, the Bible verse, the path of the righteous man. And, that's been in my family for a long time. So I knew the scripture. And I called Paul Heyman back and I said, I love the movie. I was like, why did you want me to specifically watch Samuel L. Jackson? He goes, because that's going to be your character. He goes, not only are you going to be Mr. T, but you're going to be Samuel L. Jackson, Jules, and Pulp Fiction. He goes, let me ask you a question. Being that you are a pastor's son, can you quote scriptures if need be? I said, absolutely, I can. He goes, give me one right at the top of the head. And I gave him one. He was like, give me another one. It was like one after the other. He goes, okay, so got it. And it got to the point where he says, I want you to go home and really study that character. And I want you to start using the word testify. And I said, okay, not a problem. And I said, when do you want me to use testify? He goes, after everything you say, any promo you get, use the word testify. He goes, I don't care if it doesn't make sense where you put it. You just use the word testify. That's how D-Von Dudley was born.
And that's the genius of Paul Heyman right there, isn't it? Just, that vision to see something that others wouldn't, and just incredible. And but I wanted to ask you as well, because I heard you speaking to good friend of the show, Chris Van Vliet, and you talked to him about how you, when you were looking at becoming a wrestler, you wanted to be like the Black Hulk Hogan. So like with that in mind, like obviously you end up becoming, part of the most successful tag team in history. Were you initially disappointed that you weren't going to be, that your path was as a duo as opposed to a single star?
Yes, I never wanted to become a tag team wrestler. I've always wanted to become a singles wrestler. Bubba wanted to become a tag team wrestler, and he's always said that. He's on record at saying that. Me personally, yeah, I wanted to be the Black Hulk Hogan at the time, because I was such a fan of Hulk Hogan's. I idolized him, loved his promos. I actually used to memorize his promos and do them in front of the mirror and stuff. So when I was told I was going to be in a tag team, I was like, okay. And I just remember being scared when I got to ECW because, these were grown ass men. I was like 22, 23 at the time. I was a kid. And these men were beating the crap out of each other using barbed wire bats and thumbtacks. And, it was crazy. And I said, well, maybe being in the tag team won't be so bad. I could have somebody help me. And long enough, Bubba was put with me and I was part of the Dudley Boyz. And, the rest is history. Yeah. Again, I don't regret being in a tag team. There were times during the tag team run that I had tried to get out to do singles and, way before the Reverend D-Von thing, and it never happened. And so when the Reverend D-Von did come out, I was faced with a lot of elements because you got to look at it. At that time, I had been in the tag team for 12 years, never really did singles every once in a while. So now you're going to put me in a singles gimmick, try to get the Reverend D-Von character over more than I had tried to do it with D-Von Dudley with the Testify. And then you're going to put a guy named Batista with me who's never really had any real training. And I say that because even though he was in OVW, when I asked Dave, I said, because there was a certain spot I needed him to do, and he couldn't do it. And I said, and it shocked me. And I just went, what do you mean you can't do it? He goes, well, they only taught me how to do run-ins. I go, what do you mean they taught you how to just do run-ins? He goes, I never really learned. I was like, what? And it shocked me. So now you have the guy who is as big as Batista is. He's with me. He's like my bodyguard. I got to try to, teach him and move him around the ring and put him in a good spot. Not only that, but I got to get a character over. And then on top of that, I got to get myself over. Mm-hmm. So I had all those three elements against me, and nobody had seemed to understand that. And it was working great at first. And then all of a sudden, somewhere it went south.
I think it was a casualty of the time, personally, because 2002 was in the nicest possible way, 2002 was a bit of a hot mess in WWE. Kind of, it was, the invasion had just happened and failed. Kind of, they split you and Bubba up very quickly. It felt like there was all these, new blood coming in from John Cena to, as you say, Batista to Brock Lesnar. All this influx of OVW talent who probably weren't quite ready at the time. There was too much going on, and I think a character like to take a beloved character like D-Von and Bubba Ray and to make them single stars needed a lot more time and focus. And it was like suddenly you were just split up and had to kind of make it work on the fly.
Well, WWE at that time sometimes did things like that. They rushed things when they shouldn't have. Vince thought it was a great idea to separate us and to put us singles. He didn't make it as a singles at the time, and neither did I. So, it was wrong timing. It was bad timing, whatever you want to call it, but it just didn't work.
Did you from coming at from your faith background, how did you feel about doing the Reverend D-Von gimmick? Did you feel comfortable doing it, or a bit like because of the character and the overtones of it?
I was comfortable, but I wasn't. Mm. And I say that because I didn't want to offend my parents. Yeah. They were making the Reverend D-Von character look like a televangelist that was crooked. Yep. And, was stealing money from the church and trying to hurt the people within the church. So I did have a little bit of problem with it. And I remember going to my father and telling him, and his exact words to me was, when you're done hooping and hollering in the ring, bring it over to where it really counts in the pool pit. And I never told my mother until one day somebody from the congregation said, I saw your son on TV preaching and carrying on and beating people up, talking about it was in the name of Jesus. And then I get the phone call saying, what's going on? And I told her, and she was just like, mm-hmm. She bit her lip. She was like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. She was like, I'm not good with this. I said, I know. I said, it's not going to be like ECW. I'm not going to be sitting up there cursing and carrying on. I promise you. I said, I will try to keep it as respectful as I possibly can. I said, but know who my boss is. Yeah. I said, it's Vince McMahon. Mom, I don't give a damn if it's Vince McMahon. If I need to go talk to him, I'll talk. I said, no, you won't. Like, no, you won't, Ma. Love you with all due respect, but can't have a meeting with Vince. This is not high school where you got to speak to my teacher or principal.
Yeah, there's an element we just got to follow direction there. But I personally felt that it could have done a lot more of that character. It felt like it was very rushed. And I remember your reunion of the Dudleys. It just felt it was very rushed, and it could have done more. But I want to kind of circle back a little bit and forgive me, we're whizzing through because I hope we can do this again sometime and have a bit more time. But there's so many things I could ask you about. Your incredible match that you had at Royal Rumble 2000 with the Hardys still stays, jumps out at me as one of my favorites of all time. I was probably, how old was I? I was 15, 16. I stayed up till like 3 a.m. in the UK to watch that show from Madison Square Garden. It just blew me away. What was it like to be part of that night? Because that was such a history-making match for WWE at the time.
Well, me growing up in Brooklyn, New York, born and raised, Madison Square Garden being the mecca of professional wrestling and all sports entertainment, basketball, everything that could be, even singing and performing in Madison Square Garden. It was always said, if you can make it at Madison Square Garden, you can make it anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so for me to be in WWE at the time, the place where I've always wanted to work and be a part of, and to have a milestone match like that with the Hardy Boys, the tables match, it was great. It was a great feeling. I never thought that I would be performing in front of 20,000 plus people and having them on their feet the whole entire 15, 20 minutes of the match. Yeah. It was truly incredible. And, the Hardys, I love those guys to death. I named my son Matthew after Matt. That's how close Matt and I are. And, I basically couldn't thank those guys enough. Between that match at the Royal Rumble that we created history at, as well as the TLC matches, and I always say this, none of us could have did that with any other team, any other members, except for the 6 guys that were in that ring. We couldn't do it without Edge and Christian, and we definitely couldn't do it without the Hardys, and they definitely could have done it without the Dudleys. Yeah. We worked together. We had chemistry, and it was to the point where we could do whatever we wanted to do in that ring, not even talk to each other. We could feel each other, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, those matches, when you were kind of breaking barriers with TLC, I mean, they looked brutal because I'm sure they were brutal. I mean, how terrifying was it to kind of be part of the TLC match with so many kind of moving parts and so little margin for error when it comes to injury?
I wasn't worried about that. The only thing I was worried about was hanging with Jeff 30 feet up in the air. That crazy son of a bitch stopped kicking me even when the ladder wasn't moved. I still tease him to this day. He always messes with me. I go, I will never, ever hang up 30 feet up in the air with you ever again. You sick bastard.
I think that's really good advice for a long and happy life, to be honest, avoiding doing that.
Yeah. Him and Matt they always laugh. Edge gets a kick out of it because Edge was like, he said in an interview, he goes, I'm trying to move the ladder and D-Von is screaming. You can see the tears coming from his eyes going, move the damn ladder, man.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you're the first of the TLC 6 that I've been lucky enough to interview. So I will say to you and pass this on to the rest, just thank you for thank you for all you did in the spirit of entertainment, really, because I wouldn't have done what you did. And, it was incredible to watch and so many memories. The other thing I kind of want to ask you about quickly is your obviously once you've kind of moved away from wrestling, but then you move into a producer role with WWE. And I know that, a big part of that role was, you mentioned them earlier when they were very young, that you were producing that incredible rivalry, that series between the New Day and the Usos. That was just absolute magic that those 4 put on. What experience did you bring to those matches as a producer and someone who has, dominated tag teams for so long?
Well, me putting the headset on, calling the match to the truck to Kevin Dunn, getting the right camera angles and things like that for those guys, giving them my influence. Listen, it was those guys that basically went in there and did that. I can't take any credit for that. Those guys were excellent. They were fun to work with, and they allowed me to be able to give advice and use the advice, for those matches. So I was very thankful for that. Even if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a WrestleMania match as well with those guys that took place that I was able to be a part of. So I had a lot of fun working with the New Day and the Usos, and I'm so proud of them to this day, especially the Usos, from where they come. Jay, just incredible. Jimmy, just incredible. Xavier, Kofi, Big E when he comes back. I mean, God, I can't begin. That was the greatest time of my life as a producer. I love those guys immensely. That's why, fans don't understand. People are like, oh, the Usos are using your finish. I'm like, listen, you morons. They came to me and asked me and Bubba if they were able to use the finish. They didn't have to ask. We were retired. We weren't doing it anymore. Even if they didn't, so what? They're paying homage to a team that came before them. So why would I be upset if the Usos decided to use 3D? I'm not Taz. I'm not going to sit up here and somebody puts the freaking Kata Hajime, whatever you call that damn move, he's going to get upset on Twitter and start talking about it. We don't do that. We go, congratulations. Now let us show you how to really do it. We don't get mad at that. That's stupid to get mad at. They're paying homage to us. You should be happy that somebody is doing that.
Yeah.
And that's the way we always felt about that. And that's the way I felt. So when fans were hitting me up on Twitter or even Instagram, the Usos are using your finish. And it's like, and what's wrong with that?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a respect thing. It's paying homage, and it's kind of looking back at who came before you and who paved the way, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then when you were producing as well, I understand that you were involved with quite a lot of the women talent as well, weren't you? Who was
No, no. A lot of that was Fit Finley.
oh, okay.
I had a couple of matches with the women. I did a lot of stuff with Lacey Evans,
Yeah.
who is a very, very good friend of mine. She's a very good friend of my family's. I mean, she's like my little sister to me. Her husband, her kids. I'm Uncle D-Von. Her husband is like my brother. I mean, we are just very, very close. I had matches between her and Natty, Natalia. I produced their matches. I had a lot of Oscar matches. I had some of Oscar matches, things like that. But the majority of matches that were done with the women were Fit Finley. So I was just happy to have a few underneath my belt.
Yeah, I've had a few of the women from that era would talk about Fit and talk about him being the godfather of the women's division and how much of a role he played. Incredible.
Excellent teacher.
Yeah.
Far better than me.
Well, don't do yourself down. I want to talk about kind of where we're at now. So we're recording this towards the end of 2024, and as I said earlier, and obviously it's been clear through this conversation, faith is really important to you and has been a guiding principle throughout your life, as it has mine. How I understand you've got some things in the work and some ideas for kind of where you want to go from here. What are you thinking about doing next in terms of
Well, I had a conversation with Mark Marrow, who used to be Sable's husband and used to be in WCW and also WWE at the time. I saw him doing a thing, speaking to kids and things like that, going around in different places. And WWE used to bring me and Bubba in to things like that, going around to the different cities and states, talking to kids. It was called the Get Real program. And we were able to go out and speak to the kids and help them, to stay out of trouble, stay in school, things like that. So when I saw Mark Marrow's videos that he would post or somebody else would post, I had always wanted to get back into the swing of things with that. And so I saw Mark at an autograph signing. I said, man, I've been meaning to call you because I want to know how I can join you and to be able to do this. He goes, D-Von, you'll never be home. I go, okay. I was like, and what's the downfall of it? And he was like, okay. He was like, well, let's talk. Let's get this going. I said, okay. So I pretty much got my hands in everything. I have a cigar line that's coming out. I'm actually this Friday coming up, I'm going to do the testing for the cigars because we were supposed to have done it last week, but we had that big hurricane here in Florida. So it postponed a lot of stuff. So now it's being done this Friday coming up. The samples are coming in and I'm going to test it and give my opinion on it. And then we're going to go from there.
Amazing.
So, I got my hands in that, the wrestling school. I mean, I have my hands pretty much in a lot of different things, and that's going to be one of them added to my plate. So I'm going to be a very busy man come 2025.
Absolutely. And of course, you've got the D-Von Academy, haven't you, as well, the training school?
Absolutely. Got the training facility. There are times where, I get burnt out and, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. But, you think about the kids and you got people that are telling you these people, the kids, look up to you and do this and that and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, all right, I'll keep it going. You have your moments, but, you get burnt out and that's where you have to be able to slow down.
And how is your health these days? And am I right in saying you had a stroke a few years ago?
Yeah, I had a stroke. My blood pressure was up and couldn't get it down. And, I'm not blaming the Vince regime, but it was very difficult to work for that regime during that time. Yeah. There was a lot of stress that was involved. Again, for the dirt sheet riders, I'm not saying that the man gave me a stroke. I'm just saying at that time, my blood pressure was sky high through the roof and they couldn't get it down. And of course, when you don't take care of your blood pressure and you don't do the right thing, that can happen. So many people, even in their 20s, are dying from strokes and things like that, which it was unheard of. I had never heard of that before until I had mine. And if the phone call wasn't made at the time that it was made, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. It was within a matter of seconds that phone call was made. And they came through the door and called the ambulance and got me in there. So they had to do an emergency surgery. They had to run a stent through the right side of my groin, bring it up to the brain to break up the stroke and go from there. I'm happy to say that I'm back to normal. I had I think they were safe to say like 65% on my left side. That's all I had. I had to rehab it and put it back into back to about 95%, almost 100. So I had lost a lot of stuff on my left side because of it. And it was on its way of me losing, being, I guess you could say, not having any feeling on my left side at all. But through the grace of God, somebody was there to make that phone call and make it happen.
Yeah, thank God you're here today, and you're looking in great health, and obviously you got your little 8-month-old to look after. So, just wish more kind of health and happiness to you. Really, I mean, the classic question that's always asked of every wrestler is the one more match question. Do you think? I don't know whether another match is on the card, but do you think we'll ever see another 3D sneaking its way into a ring somewhere?
Here's what I'm going to tell you. Every time you do one match.
Yeah.
You say one more match, and then the fans are going one more match after that. They're not going to stop until you're in the grave,
no.
But I don't know. I'm not going to say never. There are some talks about things happening, whether it's here in the States or even over abroad in Japan. So nothing. It's just talks. That's it. Nothing is being edged in stone or anything like that. So again, for you dirt sheet riders, I'm going on record and saying, don't say that there's another match coming up somewhere. I'm saying that there were rumblings and talks about it. So don't sit up there and put in your little dirt sheets that D-Von said this and D-Von said that. Because if you do, you can go f*** yourself.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, I was there, as I say, at WrestleMania, and obviously I saw Bubba come out, and the response he received was just a testament to how much love there is for the pair of you from the fans and everything.
And
so,
and I want to go public also in saying, because there are still rumblings about this, about me and Bubba being at ends with each other, and we're not. Bubba and I are perfectly fine. Stop the freaking rumors. Go about your business. Go in your grandmother's basement and wait for them to come back with the apple pie. Shut the hell up. Bubba and I are fine. There's no arguments. There's no nothing. Okay, we have like a brother relationship where we will beat the hell out of each other, but don't let you come in and try to beat the hell out of us. We can say whatever we want about each other, but you better not, especially in front of us. Bubba and I are fine. We don't have a bad relationship. We never have and never will. The Dudley boys will go on for as long as we possibly want. So again, I say this out of respect, and if you got to bleep me, beat me. Go yourselves.
I'm not going to bleep you. Yeah, no, and I mean, the pair of you are just incredible, and so many wonderful memories. Final question, I guess. When you look back at your wrestling life, you accomplished so much, and it's just amazing to see all of your achievements. What are you proudest of from your incredible wrestling career?
Proud that I've never really gotten in trouble like some of these guys have gotten in. I've kept my nose clean. You never heard about a bad thing about D-Von in the media. Things like that. I've been well respected, and I'm happy about that. So, not to mention, I was able to do things my way. Told my son last night, I said, if something was ever happened to me, just always remember to tell them, don't feel sorry for me, but just know that a little boy from Brooklyn, New York, came out of the projects, made it, was successful, and did it his way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, that's a testament to a life well lived, I think, doing things your way, doing it on your own terms. For my audience, want to encourage them to support you on your journey and your next steps in any way they can. You mentioned the various brands and the projects you've got coming on. I know you're on Instagram at Testify D-Von, and you've got devonacademy.com. What's the best way for kind of my listeners to reach out and connect with you and keep up to date with what you're up to?
Well, you can go on Facebook at D-Von Dudley Academy as well for the wrestling school. You can also go to Testify D-Von on Twitter. I'm there as well. I'm not on there as much as I am on Instagram, but you can go on Instagram, DM me. We could talk. I'll answer it within reason, respectfully. You get some knuckleheads that get on there and want to talk crap. I just block them. I don't even respond to those idiots, but you can contact me there. Everything that I do for my appearances and so forth and so on will be on Instagram and Twitter. My Facebook is private, so I don't really put anything out there. I don't have any fans on there. It's just my close friends and family. That's it. No fans.
Yeah, you need a barrier between wrestling life and real life. It's really important to have those two lines in the sand.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I mean, I always do a couple of thanks at the end. My main one being to the audience checking it out today, and to my producer, Jeff Easton from Tall Oak Productions. But my biggest thank you is to you, D-Von, for all the memories, and for a really great faith-filled conversation today. And I just want to wish you, every bit of luck with what's to come. And if you can find time to fit me into a crazy 2025, there's many more things I could ask you in the future. So I hope we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Love to do it. Just get contact with me. You have my information, you have my vitals, and we can do it again.
Will do. Thank you, D-Von Dudley, for being such a great guest on Wrestling Life.